about the all-new DJI Osmo Action 5. If you don't know about this camera, it's one of the most insane action cameras available on the market, and I've been able to get some incredible footage on this thing, and I've learned kind of all the secrets that I think you can have for getting the best settings and quality out of this guy. That's exactly what we're talking about this week. I'm gonna walk you through the best settings I've learned, because it is a beast of a camera if you know how to use it right. Okay, first things first, let's start off with the basics. You got your camera, and on the top is the record button. On this left side here is the power/quick switch button, and on the right side over here is the battery and SD card slot. Also on the bottom, we've got the magnetic quick switch plate. Now when you first turn your camera on, you should be automatically put into video mode, indicated by the camcorder symbol on the bottom left. If you see a different symbol, you can tap the quick switch or power button on the left side here to cycle through two modes, photo and video. For this tutorial, we're going to be mostly focused on video. Now to run you through what all these symbols on the LCD screen mean, you'll see we've got battery life indicated in the top right, SD space in the top left, playback in the mid left, mode in bottom left, resolution and frame rate on bottom, optical zoom on bottom right, and settings in the mid right. Okay, first things first, let's get you guys set up with my most used mode. First thing we're gonna do is tap on the bottom here to bring up resolutions and frame rate settings. We're gonna navigate under resolution to 4K 16:9, and then we're gonna navigate on FPS to 120. Make sure regular RS is enabled there in the top right, as well as regular wide field of view. If we click on it, you'll see there's three options: off, rock steady, and rock steady plus. And on the right, you'll see we have standard and wide for this mode. We want rock steady and we want wide. I recommend just using rock steady because rock steady plus tends to crop in a lot, and off tends to make your footage really shaky, but sometimes that's a good look if you're making it look rowdy and chaotic. Now that we have our 4K 120 rock steady mode set, we can swipe back to the main menu and click on the sliders in the right middle here to pop up settings. Click Pro in the top right, and now you'll see we get a handful of settings to play with. This is where things are important. Let's start off by going to exposure. For exposure, I set the ISO locked between 100 to 800. And for best results, I also have my shutter locked to double my frame rate. In this case, we're shooting 4K 120 FPS, so you see I have my shutter at 1/240. Keep in mind, when you lock the shutter like this, you also lock the exposure limiting to only the range of the ISO, which means if you go into any really bright or dark spots, it won't do as good of a job at correcting the different lighting scenarios. Also guys, to lock your shutter, you're probably gonna need ND filters, which I highly recommend. But if you don't wanna buy those, or this is getting too complex, just leave your shutter on auto and it'll do the work. ND filters and shutter speed just allows your footage to level up a little bit more by giving it that buttery motion blur look seen in this clip here. It kind of just gives the viewer a real sense of speed and movement, and if you want that look, yeah, sadly you're gonna need ND filters. Next setting we'll talk about is WB, which stands for white balance. If we click on that, you see AWB, which means auto white balance, and M, which stands for manual. I usually keep my white balance on auto until I get to my shoot, and then I click M. You'll see that if I do that, the auto corrects it to whatever it thinks it should be, and then when you click M, it locks it there at 5900 in this specific situation. Then I'll click confirm once I'm on my shoot, and by locking it at the auto white balance that it selects, it just keeps color fluctuation to a minimum and has your footage just look more consistent throughout the shoot. Our next setting is color, and this is a really important one. I highly recommend that you click color and scroll down to D-Log M 10-bit. Also over on the left on the Osmo Action 5 Pro, we have a color recovery option. We have this off that gives you the standard log look. If we have it on, you'll see generally what it's gonna look like after it's color corrected. I like to leave it on so that my footage doesn't look too grayscale while I'm filming, but then I have that grayscale flexibility later on. Now D-Log M 10-bit is super important because what this does is shoot a super raw format. The video comes back to you in what is pretty much a grayscale, and it's beneficial because it allows us to retain the details in all the shadows and the highlights, and allows us to add our own presets later in post so that we get the most flexibility possible with these color hues. This stuff can sound super complicated, but I promise it's super easy if you just look into it a bit. I even made a video walking you through coloring action camera footage step by step, which I'll link below. And to make your life even easier, I've also developed my own presets specifically designed for Osmo Action 5 and all different action cameras and action sports scenarios like skiing or surfing. You You can buy those from the link in the description below if you're interested. Our last setting here is gonna be image adjustments. If we click on that, I like to keep my texture at -1 and my noise reduction also at -1. This is all up to preference though, so kind of play with the different looks and see which one fits you best. I've just found the -1 gives a nice soft look that you can retain later in post and add more sharpness if you feel it needs it. Okay, that's it for camera settings. So now let's swipe over to the audio. I just keep this channel on stereo and noise reduction on standard. That's kind of all there is to it for audio. Once we have that all set, return to the main screen, pull down from the top, click the person icon in the top left and click Save Current Settings. This just set us our very first preset. Now check it out, when we press the left button, the quick switch mode, we have it saved right there. Boom. This 4K 120 FPS mode is my go-to mode, guys. This is the one that I use 90% of the time unless I want the shot to look either super fast or have a super wide field of view. Other than that though, it's what I use for follow cams while skiing or any other shot that I'm just capturing because it gives us the most flexibility in post-production with the slow motion, and it still has incredible quality with the 4K. Now we're gonna set up 2 more custom modes that I consistently use a lot, but don't worry, we got all those technical settings out of the way, so really all we're changing on these modes is resolutions and frame rates. For this, we're just gonna go back into resolutions and frame rates, and we're gonna keep it on 4K for resolution, and then we're gonna swipe over to 60 for frame rate. We're gonna have RS enabled still on the top right, but here is where things change. We're gonna click on the field of view and go into ultra wide. As you can see, the scene punches out quite a bit, and this is the mode I use for all things POV because it really makes it look like you're looking through the subject's eyes. Now, if we go back to the main menu, swipe down from the top, click the person icon, click save, and now we have that saved as yet another mode. If we click our quick switch button, now we've got a go-to mode and we've got a POV mode. Okay, for mode 3, the final mode, we're gonna go to resolutions and frame rates one more time. We're gonna take resolution all the way back to 1080 and we're gonna take FPS all the way up to 240. And then for field of view, we're actually gonna keep this on ultra wide. So this is like our slow motion POV setting. This is what I would use if I was surfing barrels or I was doing something POV that I really wanted to slow time down for. We're gonna save this as we have been, swipe down from the top, click the person icon, click boom, saved. Mode 3. Okay, now that we understand our video modes and hopefully have our perfect settings dialed in, I'll walk you through the other modes on the camera. I personally don't use them a lot, but they're for sure useful to know about. Let's take your finger, swipe left, and you'll see a super night mode. This is all new on Osmo Action 5 Pro. And to be honest with you, I don't really use it, but it's made for nighttime action camera footage and it supposedly does really good for nighttime action camera footage, but I'm not gonna touch on it because I don't use it and I don't wanna misinform you guys when I don't use a setting on the camera. Next setting we're gonna touch on is subject tracking. I also don't use this. I actually have no idea what it does. I think it exposes for your subject and keeps you properly lit using some subject tracking focus thing, but I also don't feel a need for that because I just manually set my settings with what I taught you about. Next setting, slow motion. This shoots your footage in slow-mo and then you can add the audio in post-production later. It's pretty much the same as the modes we just set, but the opposite. Our modes that we just set shoot in regular and then you can slow them down later, where this shoots in slow-mo and then you can speed them up later. In my opinion, it's just more difficult that way. Next mode, hyperlapse. This mode's actually awesome. We can click on the right side here, go into our settings. Exposure, I leave on auto. ISO, 100 to 800. Color, D-Log M. Auto white balance for hyperlapse. And then if we go back to the actual settings of the hyperlapse, it kind of just depends on what you're doing. If you're doing something that isn't moving super fast, like clouds, you're gonna wanna crank the hyperlapse speed up to something like ×15 or ×30 so that you can actually capture the clouds moving. If you're driving, however, you might wanna be on X5, X10. This is really fun to just play around with, and they can add a nice dynamic to your footage if you use hyperlapse and time lapses properly. And then the very last mode is all the way back to photo. If we click on the bottom, we can select our aspect ratio, medium 4:3, medium 16:9, large 16:9, so on, yada yada. Let's keep it on large 16:9. Then you'll see we can choose the images in an amount of seconds. This is a new feature. You can choose to get 6 pictures in 3 seconds or 9 pictures over the course of 3. Depends on what you're shooting. If you were doing like a burst photo of like an athlete, say launching off a ski jump, you'd probably want to get as many pictures as you could in as short a time as you could. So 9 pictures at 3 seconds would be a great option. But if you just want to take a singular photo, you can turn this off, so on and so forth. Click the sliders on the right to adjust your camera settings. Exposure, let's leave this one on auto, and ISO 100/800 per usual. White balance, leave it on auto. For photo, it'll do just fine. And for format, I like JPEG and RAW. RAW just gives you that additional flexibility similar to the D-Log footage where it's grayscale. You get more attention in the details for highlights and shadows. Another useful thing to do for photos is swipe down, click the voice control mode, turn it on, and now you can say, take photo. Boom. That helps a lot if you are like getting a selfie and you're holding the camera out. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about the DJI Mimo app. I don't use this incredibly often, but it's super useful to know about, and it's actually really cool. I'd say the main thing that I like about it is it's super easy to just connect to your camera and remotely control it. You can adjust all the settings from your phone, which is an easier screen to look at in many cases. You can get your angle set up, you can view it through your phone, and on top of that, probably my favorite feature above all is the playback, exporting, and uploading the social ability. You can literally just preview a clip right off of the app, download it to your phone right away, convert it to a social clip, and upload it to your story on Instagram or post on Instagram pretty much instantaneously after shooting it, and it comes off of a quality camera as opposed to just your phone. So I've been really trying to dial that in and train my brain to do that right after I shoot with the action camera, and it kind of just helps level up your social content game quite a bit. Other than that, I vainly like to go and preview the footage right after I come in from a surf session or something and just like watch it on my phone. It's kind of fun to just preview your clips and watch it there, download them straight away, and share it with your buddies. Overall, guys, that pretty much covers my entire tutorial on the DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I'll be sure to answer them. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like it, subscribe if you're new here, and until next time, my friends, peace.